All right, let's just dive right in. Because if you've ever wondered whether you could actually own an electric car outside of a big city, you're definitely not alone. I mean, we all see those shiny Teslas and Rivians zipping around downtown, plugging in at every corner, and it looks so easy, right? But what if you're living out where the nearest Starbucks is a 30-minute drive, or your idea of rush hour is getting stuck behind a tractor? Is driving electric still a real option, or is it just a big city thing? So let's talk about the real deal with recharging an EV when you're not in the middle of all that city action. I want to break it down for you. No jargon, no lectures, just what it's actually like. And hey, if you're into this kind of straight talk about cars, tech, and life outside the city, don't forget to hit subscribe. I've got plenty more where this came from. Okay, so here's the thing. Owning an electric car outside a big city is totally possible, but it's not exactly the same experience as what you see in those slick commercials. Let's start with the #1 issue, charging. In the city, you've got chargers everywhere. Seriously, sometimes I think there are more charging stations than parking spots, but once you get out into the burbs, or even further out into the country, it's a whole different story. If you're living in a small town or out in the sticks, public charging stations can be really hard to find. Some folks call these areas charging deserts, and it's a pretty good name, honestly. You might have to drive 20, 30, even 50 miles just to find a fast charger. And if you're on a road trip, you better plan your route like you're prepping for the Oregon Trail, because you do not want to get stranded with a dead battery and nothing but cows for company. But here's where it gets interesting. If you own your place and have a garage or even just a driveway, you can set up a home charger. And that changes everything. Charging at home is like having your own personal gas station. You just plug in at night, and in the morning, you're good to go. For a lot of people in the suburbs or in rural areas with a house and some space, this is actually easier than you'd think. The catch? If you're renting or you live in an apartment or your power supply isn't super reliable, it gets trickier. Not impossible, but you might have to get creative. Now let's talk about range anxiety. If you've never heard that term, it's basically the fear of running out of battery before you can find a place to charge up. In the city, it's not really a thing. Chargers are everywhere, and your daily drive is probably pretty short. But out in the country, you might drive 40 miles just to get groceries and then another 60 to see your folks on the weekend. Suddenly, that 300-mile range on your EV doesn't feel so generous, especially if it's winter and the battery drains faster. And don't even get me started on fast charging. In the city, you can find those super fast chargers that'll juice up your car in 20 or 30 minutes, just enough time to grab a coffee and doom scroll on your phone. But out in rural America, fast chargers are rare. You might find a regular charger at a motel or a grocery store, but those can take hours. So if you're the kind of person who likes to just hop in the car and go wherever the wind takes you, you'll need to plan ahead a bit more than you would with a gas car. Let's pause for a second, though, because there's some good news, too. If you can charge at home and your daily routine isn't all that crazy, like you're not driving 200 miles every day, owning an EV can actually be pretty awesome. You'll save a ton on gas. You'll barely ever have to think about oil, changes or engine problems, and the ride is super quiet and smooth. Plus, if you're into tech, there's something pretty cool about controlling your car from your phone or having it preheat itself before you even get out of bed. But the upfront cost is still a thing. EVs are getting cheaper, but they're still more expensive than a lot of regular cars, especially if you're looking at something new. And while you do save money on gas and maintenance over time, that first big payment can be a hurdle, especially if you're on a tight budget. Some states offer tax credits or rebates, but it really depends on where you live. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, but what about all those government programs and new chargers everyone keeps talking about? And yeah, there's a lot happening on that front. The government is definitely trying to make it easier to drive electric, even in small towns. There are grants and incentives for businesses to install chargers, and some states are even requiring gas stations to EV charging. It's not going to happen overnight, But in the next few years, you'll probably see more and more chargers popping up at places like grocery stores, rest stops, and even your local diner. Plus, the tech is getting better all the time. Batteries are lasting longer, charging is getting faster, and some new cars can go 400 miles or more on a single charge. That's a game changer if you live out where everything is spread out. And there are even some wild ideas floating around, like chargers built into streetlights or roads that charge your car as you drive. We're not there yet, but it's not as sci-fi as it sounds. But here's the bottom line. If you're thinking about getting an EV and you don't live in a city, you just have to be a little more strategic. Ask yourself a few questions. Can you charge at home? How far do you usually drive in a day? Are there at least a couple of public chargers within a reasonable distance just in case? If you can check those boxes, you're probably good to go. If not, it might be worth waiting a year or two, or maybe looking at a plug-in hybrid as a stepping stone. Let me give you a quick comparison, just to paint the picture. In the city, you've got chargers everywhere, but you might not have a garage to call your own. In the suburbs, you've got the best of both worlds, home charging, decent public options, and your daily drive is usually pretty manageable. Out in the country, it's all about that home charger. If you've got one, you're set. If not, you might be doing a lot of planning, or a lot of waiting around at the one public charger in town. And look, I'm not saying it's all sunshine and rainbows. There are still some real challenges. If your power goes out a lot, or if you're renting, or if you just don't have the budget for a new car, it can be tough. But things are changing fast. A few years ago, the idea of driving an EV in the middle of nowhere would have sounded crazy. Now, it's not just possible. It's actually pretty practical for a lot of folks. So, what's the takeaway here? If you're living outside a big city and you want to go electric, do your homework. Check out the charging map for your area. Talk to your utility company about home charging, and maybe even chat with some neighbors who've already made the switch. The more you know, the easier it'll be to make the jump. And if you're not quite ready yet, that's cool too. The infrastructure is getting better every year, and the cars themselves are only going to get more affordable and more capable. So, whether you're ready to plug in now or you're just curious about what's coming next, you're in the right place. All right, that's my take on owning an electric car outside the big city. If you found this helpful or you've got your own EV stories to share, drop a comment below. And hey, don't forget to hit subscribe if you want more real talk about cars, tech, and life wherever you call home. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll catch you in the next one.